Hello and welcome. You're watching India Global. I'm Gauri Dwivedi. This is the show that gets you all that matters from India and around the world. As always, we start the show with headlines and tell you the stories we're tracking this hour. Prime Minister Modi and the Fiji Prime Minister hold talks to boost trade and ties. India and Fiji agree to cooperate on a variety of issues, including defense and maritime security. Shocking attack that's come to light where there's been an attack on an Indian restaurant in the UK. It's an arson attack where 5 people have been injured and a teen and an adult have now been arrested over the arson attack. Is this a case of hate attack and is it targeting of Indians? We tell you more on that. Aggressive leverage, that's what US Vice President Vance says when he justifies the attack and continues to hit out as far as the additional tariffs that have been levied on India by the US. India asserts will buy oil from wherever best deal is on the table. India hits back. Sri Lanka's former president Ranil Wickremesinghe held over graft charges. We will speak in an exclusive interview with the former cabinet minister Jeevan Thondaman to tell you more about what really are the charges against him and is this political vendetta. Days after Prime Minister Modi spoke from the ramparts of Red Fort, spoke about Sudarshan Chakra, India now successfully tests indigenous air defense system. It's a multi-layered shield, India's new air defense system, the Sudarshan Chakra, to keep India and Indians safe. Top story on the show this week on India Global. This is from Sri Lanka, where there's been a shocking turn of events where first Sri Lankan, in fact, it's the first in Sri Lankan history where former president and six-time Premier Ranil Wickremesinghe was arrested on Friday. So about 48 hours back is when he was arrested. Now the charges against him include misusing state funds during his presidency. Now the 76-year-old leader was remanded in custody until the 26th of August, when the next hearing will will be held to decide as to what really should be the future course of action. Now he was taken into custody after the Sri Lankan Police's Criminal Investigation Department questioned him about his visit to a British university in September 2023 when he was the head of state. This was to attend a ceremony where his wife, who's a senior academician, was honoured. While Wickremesinghe's party has denied any misuse of state funds, opposition leaders accused the Dissanayake government of jailing the country's former president over fears that he could return to power. Now, why is it this is so important for our viewers to note is that Sri Lanka has already seen through a lot of political instability in the backdrop of Gotabaya Rajapakse's sudden exit when he was pretty much driven out of power as Sri Lanka was facing complete bankruptcy. That time, it was Ranil Wickremesinghe who had taken charge, and it was his government which led Sri Lanka towards transition. He fought the election against Anurakumara Dissanayake last year. He lost the election, and since then, now there have been some rumors that are coming in, whispers, particularly within the opposition camp, hinting that this could be more than just a simple case of state power being used or misused. Now, what does this mean? Is this political vendetta? How should one read it? Is this now going to escalate between a larger war of words between AKD, Anurakumara Disanayake's party, and Ranil Wickremesinghe are questions that remain to be answered. But for India, this is important because the one thing that India has been very clear about is that Sri Lanka now needs to have political stability. It needs to have complete economic stability and political stability, something that New Delhi has reiterated and has been part of and has assured its full support and cooperation all along Colombo's extremely difficult and challenging years and months which are now hopefully behind it. And it was under Ranil Wickremesinghe's tenure when the entire country saw a recovery as far as from Gotabaya Rajapakse's tenure, when that entire issue really led to massive inflation. People were out on the streets, and Sri Lanka was facing complete bankruptcy. Now, what are these cases all about? What are these charges all about? Let's put that out for our viewers to understand. And let's get in Vishal Vivek, my colleague, to tell you more about it. The specific charges, Vishal, that are being levelled against Wickremesinghe, and why is it that the opposition feels it could not be just a simple case of corruption, could be more than that? Go ahead, Vishal, fill us in.
So let's look at some of the key facts of the whole case, Gauri. So he's the first ex-president of Sri Lanka to be arrested, and he faces up to 20 years in jail, and 16.6 million Sri Lankan rupees is what the amount has been billed that he could be asked to pay. And he spent around 600 million Sri Lankan rupees on 23 foreign trips is what the authorities are alleging, and he was arrested on these charges. And back in September 2023 is when he took a 2-day private visit to the UK, used government funds to attend wife's graduation ceremony. This is what the authorities and his opposition has been alleging. And he was called in for questioning by the CID and remanded in custody till August 26th. He has been subsequently hospitalized over acute dehydration, and also some opposition leaders are condemning the arrest because he's one of the biggest opposition leaders in Sri Lanka, and he was the incumbent Sri Lankan president last year, and he was uprooted by the incoming Sri Lankan president Dissanayake. And that is how this whole controversy has erupted. Whether or not this is to do something with the incumbent, administration clamping down on the opposition, that remains to be investigated. It remains to be seen by the experts. But this is indeed one of the biggest political cases to have rocked the nation of Sri Lanka.
This is one of the biggest political cases in Sri Lanka, and which is why India is watching these developments very closely. Now, we're going to try and connect with an important voice from Sri Lanka. In fact, we're going to get Jeevan Thondaman, who's the Sri Lankan politician, former cabinet minister in Ranil Wickremesinghe's government. He's with Ranil Wickremesinghe's party as well, to really understand the specific not just the charges, but also his defense. What is Ranil Wickremesinghe's defense all about against these charges? But very quickly, Vishal, what is happening is Colombo. Any political instability that happens there does have an impact in terms of how New Delhi views it, given how much we've helped Sri Lanka in its entire transition towards stability. All right, let's get in Jeevan Thondaman, who's joining us now for more on this. Jeevan, good to have you with us on India Global. Let me start by asking you that we've put out the specific charges leveled against Ranil Wickremesinghe. Walk us through the defense of Mr. Wickremesinghe and what your party and what Wickremesinghe feels as far as these charges are concerned.
First of all, thank you for having me on your show and for giving me the opportunity to clarify what is exactly happening in Sri Lanka as we speak. So I think the allegations were quite clear on former President Ranil Wickremesinghe that he had allegedly used state funds up to 16.9 million in his visit. I think there are certain clarifications which have not been put out. And to begin with, President Ranil Wickremesinghe had first of all attended the UNGA in America. And after that, he was invited by Lord Swaraj Paul, who is the Chancellor of Wolverhampton University for over 25 years. And in his felicitation ceremony, Honorable His Excellency the President Ranil Wickremesinghe was invited as a guest, which he attended. And the First Lady of Sri Lanka at the time, Professor Maitri Wickremesinghe, was also invited to attend her convocation. And I would like to inform you at this point that she had used her personal funds. And the president of the country does not shed his presidency status as he leaves the plane. Whether he is gone for an official visit or a private visit, he is the head of state, he is the incumbent president, and state protocol must be provided. So moving on from that, On Friday, President Wickremesinghe was asked to come to the CID and to give a statement regarding this matter. And as he was giving a statement, he was arrested and he was taken to courts on a Friday, with the obvious reason being that no chance of bail on Saturday and Sunday. So Friday, he was taken to courts and he was arrested and remanded up until Tuesday. Now, I would like to let you know, and especially your viewers, that the CID in any situation, even in the case of India, I'm very sure, they arrest an individual only if he or she is going to be a hindrance to the investigation. There are 38 key witnesses in this particular case. And His Excellency, the former president, was not absconding in any way. So there was no reason to arrest him.
So why do you think
But
the arrest
he was
happened? Jeevan, why do you think that the arrest happened?
Simple. I don't believe it's justice. I believe it's political theatre. The current energy minister, for example, is under investigation for misappropriation of funds. And he wields more influence over the state institutions than a former president. So if anybody who should be arrested, he should be the one arrested. But a former president was arrested. Similarly, there are union strikes that are going on across the country. 120 million rupees have we've incurred in losses. And there is this sense of unpopularity which is seeping within the people on the government, because they have made various promises to bring certain perpetrators to justice, to release details regarding scams, but nothing has actually materialized.
Okay.
So right now it's come down to the fact
you think
that
these are
the government
deviation
is trying to
tactics?
misdirect the people.
You think these
Of
are
course.
deviation tactics? Okay, my final question to you, Jeevan, is that when New Delhi looks at the political developments in Colombo, we always want that there should be stability. We've in fact ensured and partnered with Colombo all along the political instability, the economic instability that Sri Lanka saw in the last couple of years. So when we are seeing these developments here, how should we be reading this? And do you see this having a larger impact than just a specific investigation into a former president's conduct?
So before I get into it, I would just like to clarify one more thing. You see, we have to understand that the current government, the current ruling party led by President Anurakumara came into power based on a negative campaign where they opposed all traditional politicians, traditional political parties, and they did instill hatred amongst the youth, I must say. So recently, I'm sure you'd be aware as well, they have removed all privileges and perks of former presidents. And we've realized that they are doing this in order to appease a misled section of youth.
Okay.
And one important factor which nobody is taking into account, we are not shielding, and I would like to emphasize on this.
Yes.
We are not shielding the former president because he is Ranil Wickremesinghe or because he has saved the country during its worst economic crisis. But we are trying to explain that how did a YouTube influencer know about this arrest a day before it happened? He has come on television and explained it. So clearly the judgment was already made out of courts.
That's a very important point you're making, Jeevan.
Correct.
And I think that is something.
There are very serious concerns because a recess was announced by the judge at 6:30 p.m. for 30 minutes. But conveniently, the electricity goes off in the court chambers, but there's electricity around. And after 3.5 hours, we get a judgment after the primetime news that he has been arrested. No such inquiry has been taken on the YouTuber as of yet. But he made a very bold prediction. I'm sure you'll be able to find the source for that as well. Where he had mentioned, if President Wickremesinghe is not arrested tomorrow, I will shut down my channel. And in order to answer your question with relation to India's relationship with us, see, we're extremely grateful for Prime Minister Narendra Modi and how the people of India have supported us during our darkest period. And honestly, without the assistance, it would have been very difficult for us. And one thing about India is I think this needs to be spoken about openly. Historically speaking, there's always been a good relationship between India and Sri Lanka. However, only in the recent past, which is the modern history of 50 years, there's been a deep issue between Sri Lankans on how they view India and Indians on how they view Sri Lanka. But I believe after the economic crisis, we've been able to fix that relationship.
Absolutely.
And so we hope that building a relationship is not an issue. To maintain it is the issue.
I will interrupt you there,
currently-
Jeevan. I'll interrupt you there,
Yes.
Jeevan. But what you're saying is extremely important. Some of the points that you made are also very relevant, which is why we in India are also following this case so very closely. I want to thank you for taking out the time to join me on the show. And I'm
Thank
going to keep coming back to you as there are updates, because as I said, this is not just a single case about a former president being in jail regarding corruption cases, but does this lead to something bigger that New Delhi needs to keep an eye out on? And we're going to keep having those conversations. Thank you so much, Jeevan, for joining me today.
Thank you so much for your time. Thank you.
All right, turning attention now to the other important story on the show. A 15-year-old boy and a 54-year-old man were arrested on suspicion of arson on Monday after an Indian restaurant in London went up in flames, seriously injuring 5 people. Now, the police has said that officers were called to the restaurant, which is the Indian Aroma restaurant in Woodland Avenue, where this entire incident took place. It was packed with diners, and there were 3 women, and 2 men believed to be dining at the eatery they suffered burn injuries, were treated at the scene, and now there are updates coming in as far as what this attack was all about. Now, viewers, one thing needs to be kept in mind: is this an attack that came out of hate? Was this a racism-led attack? Was this an attack because of targeting of Indians? It was an Indian restaurant. Those are questions that need to be asked, and we're going to keep coming back as there are updates, because India Global is about getting you those answers. Now, Prime Minister Modi and his counterpart in Fiji have met and kick-started their discussion and dialogue to further increase the cooperation between their 2 countries. In fact, the Fiji Prime Minister is on a 3-day visit to India aimed at shoring up bilateral ties. Trade and investment are the 2 primary focus areas for the 2 leaders, even as Fiji does have very deep links with India. There's a very large section of PIOs and indentured laborers in Fiji region, and this also comes in extremely important given the fact that India is pushing ahead as far as its larger Indian Ocean strategy is concerned. Listen in to some reactions coming in, but before that, let's quickly now take a quick break. We come back with more stories on the other side. Stay with us. Every day, viewers, there's yet another voice that comes in from the Trump administration making a case for why India should be getting 50% tariffs. Not even once does anybody from the Trump administration justifies the duplicity. India should be charged 50% because this is aggressive leverage. This is the latest voice that's come in. This is Vance, the vice president, who's saying it. Now, why is he saying it? There is no justification besides the fact that his boss, which is Donald Trump, needs a Nobel. And besides the fact that Donald Trump walked out of the Alaska summit with absolutely nothing in his hand. Putin continued to engage in the war. He continues to ensure that he's able to win more ground as far as military momentum is concerned. Putin is the one who really walked away with everything from the Alaska summit. What Trump walked away with is precious nothing. And since then, you are seeing voice after voice coming in from the Trump administration justifying the duplicity. It was Nikki Haley a couple of days back. Then it was, now it is Vance and a bunch of others before that. And do not forget Peter Navarro, who used the term laundromat for Kremlin against India. But India is also replying in the same language that Donald Trump and his administration understand the best, saying that we decide what's best for us. Don't go around lecturing us. Listen in.
The president has applied aggressive economic leverage, for example, the secondary tariffs on India, to try to make it harder for the Russians to get rich from their oil economy. He's tried to make it clear that Russia can be reinvited into the world economy if they stop the killing, but they're going to continue to be isolated if they don't stop the killing.
All right, Professor Scott Lucas joins me on the broadcast. Professor Lucas, we've been saying every day that Donald Trump's administration is now coming up with new adjectives to justify their duplicity because there's nothing else that they can do. They can't stop the war, and they most certainly cannot tell India where they shouldn't buy their oil from. But how do you read this really sharp attacks that are coming in? Now it is Vance.
I must say personally, I wish India would decrease its purchases of oil from Russia and purchase oil elsewhere, because I would like to see the Russian invasion stop. But that's not why these tariffs are being put on India.
You can like a lot of things, but I will not go around lecturing you, right?
Yeah, exactly. Let's take apart this J.D. Vance interview. After Donald Trump met Vladimir Putin in Alaska just over a week ago, 10 days ago, he stopped talking about sanctions on Russia. Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, said we're not going to be expanding sanctions on Russia at this point. J.D. Vance did not refer to any direct sanctions on Russia yesterday. So why, if you stop talking about sanctions on Russia, and why, if you're not talking about sanctioning China for its purchases of Russian oil, why are you saying, oh, but we're sanctioning India? I think it has nothing to do with Russia's invasion of Ukraine. I think it actually has to do both this statement from Vance and that atrocious statement from Peter Navarro insulting India, because of the state of the trade talks, where we are with the US and India. And as your viewers will know, those talks effectively were suspended because the US delegation has canceled its trip to India this week. What you're seeing from Trump, from Vance, from Navarro are bully boy tactics. They're trying to force India into making concessions, for example, opening up its agricultural, its dairy markets, and they are using Russia as an excuse to try to make India back down.
Absolutely, and India isn't bowing down, and that is something that we've said again and again. We sign a trade deal only if it's good enough for us. A trade deal that doesn't suit us, doesn't serve our interests, will never be signed, and these pressure tactics can only work up to so much. Thank you so much, Professor Lucas. We're going to keep having these conversations because Trump administration is going to keep coming up with new objectives every single day. But let's stay with Donald Trump and now the war between him, his administration, and Harvard. It seems that now Harvard University is finally bending. America's oldest university, known for standing up, has finally bent. Where's the spine, one may ask, as far as Harvard University is concerned? Legal battle went on for a couple of months, and suddenly Ivy League University has given in. It seems to have taken a host of steps on the White House's wish list designed to reshape the culture at the university, which the Trump administration believes promotes anti-Semitic thoughts. As billions in research funding hang in balance, Harvard leaders are now negotiating with the Trump administration, fighting back, but now also giving in. Harvard is likely to pay $500 million settlement to government to settle the dispute. As I said, what happened to the spine that America's oldest university was once known for? All right, viewers, that's all the time we have on this edition of India Global. Thanks so much for watching.